One moment, why
No,
don't
I
we
was
start
too,
this
I was
video
too,
encoder?
so while we're getting ready to do that, I'm gonna try and keep this meeting to an hour. I wanna discuss if you wanna continue to have these meetings on Friday afternoons, because everybody dragged their little bodies here today, and I'm gonna guess that the consensus is no, but we have to pick a day that's much more convenient and doable for everyone. So we're gonna do that, and then really the whole purpose of today, obviously go through the minutes, again, introduce Eric, who's new to the commission, so hey, Eric. And then to have a kind of conversation about prioritizing the needs for our seniors and what we're going to look at and look for in all of these grant applications. So just kind of keep that in the back of your mind. Roll call.
All right, so Goldman.
Here.
Listen, I had to drive up 47.
On a Friday afternoon.
All right, Hennings. Gonna be late. Hoban.
Here.
Kunkel. Here. Laha. Gonna be absent. Luis.
Here.
Meshes.
Here.
Reed.
Here.
Ruth. Here. Jensen.
Here.
And Alta.
Here. All right.
Did you call my name? I'm sorry if I missed it.
Yes, Luis. Yes, I did.
Peggy Hart.
I'm sorry, Peggy Hart. Yes. Let me erase you because I did mark you down as absent. There we go.
Moving on, review and approval of the meeting minutes. Do I have a motion, Paula? Do I have a second, Teresa? Any corrections and or additions? Seeing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Public comment. We do have someone who signed up for public comment. Mickey Miller from H Strong. Yeah, let me invite you up, Mickey. Do you want to have a seat here? Why don't you sit here?
I think
You sure?
stand.
Well, we usually have a hot seat, so I was.
Thank you for allowing me to speak to you today. I'm here representing not just Senior Services Associates, but I have my backup singers with me too. And we're part of H Strong McHenry. And we started meeting together probably 3 years ago to start educating people in the county about working together for the good of the seniors. And so we've invited other organizations to join us. I can pass out the flyers to everybody. We're going to sponsor 4 open houses, and I hope that you'll at least come to one, because I think what's really important is the increasing population of the seniors in McHenry County. I understand that you're concerned about spending the funds to make sure that we're not duplicating services. I get that. But I think the part that we want to educate all of you, especially new ones, on is that we try to be complimentary about the services we provide. So I know that there's a lot who apply for transportation issues, but we're not all supplying transportation to the same people. And none of us could handle all the transportation issues. So we work together to complement the services that are out there so that we're not duplicating, but that we are meeting the needs of all the seniors in our county. So I would encourage you to attend those open houses. We're having them in 4 different locations, 4 different days. And this will give you a chance to come in, actually physically see some of our facilities. And we are going to have more than one agency represented at each open house so that you can hear how we work together. While we might be like the first stop for people, we refer to each other and work very much in conjunction with each other. And especially over the last 3 years with the COVID issues and making sure that people got to their vaccinations and could they get transportation, we have worked together as agencies very closely. So we encourage you to attend. John Buckley is kind of like our
Ringmaster?
our ringmaster by default, because he doesn't want to be, but we make him be. And the rest of us, you know, we're very proud of the work that we're doing in the county together. So,
Nikki, do you have a list of all the organizations who participate in Age Strong?
John has that list. There's some of them listed there.
Why don't we ask John to send us that and email it out to the commission?
Yeah, and I know we, Bianca sent some emails with some of our contact information too, so there are several of us. But we have opened up Age Strong McHenry to not just nonprofits now, but also some of the townships who provide transportation so that they can participate with us as well.
Okay, and if you went to one of these open houses, would you get the information that you needed, not having to go to all the?
You'll hear it differently at each location because certain people will be bringing their brochures there. I think the one at Senior Services, I think there's 4 of us going to attend that and make sure we have all our brochures together. But you will hear most of the same things that we work together.
Thank you.
Thank you. Old business, what we did not do, and thank you all actually for being here today. We've had struggles with obtaining a viable quorum at the Senior Services Grant Commission for a while. Paula, it's why we did not pass the bylaws, because you never had a quorum to be able to take that forward for the last several, but I'm just saying, thank you for being here. It's really important that we do this. We have about $1.6 million to give out to very viable and worthy organizations. We're gonna have a little discussion about that, but thank you all for being here. One of the things we did not get to at the last meeting, because we didn't have a quorum, was the election of a vice chair. Typically in the past, and I only give this as past historical, doesn't have to stay this way, but in the past there was always a representative from the not-for-profit side of the commission, just so that there was balance, county board as well as that. In the bylaws, it is not required. We can have a vice chair from anyone on the commission. So I open the floor to take nominations, and you can nominate yourself if anybody wishes to do that. What does a vice chair do, Hans and Bianca?
They act in place of the chair. So when the chair is not present, they also typically, what we've seen is sort of kind of co-leading the meetings, especially during the funding hearings and things like that.
I could do it.
Rhonda's trying to nominate me, I think.
Right,
All right, Rhonda nominates Teresa,
yes.
okay? Any other nominations from the floor?
I would like to nominate Mary Reed.
Paula nominates Mary Reed. Ooh, are we gonna have a secret ballot? Are there any other nominations from the floor? There being none, I'm gonna close the nominations. We have 2 individuals. Let's do this. Mary and Teresa, I'm going to talk slowly while you gather your thoughts, and why don't you tell the commission a little bit about your background and let us know who you are. Teresa, you're on tap. You were nominated first, so.
All right, hello committee members. I'm Teresa Mashis. As many of you know, I represent the District 1 of the County Board. I've been on the County Board since November of 2020. I served on the Senior Service Grant Commission for the last 2 years. I am passionate that we do a fantastic job on the commission. I have been very happy with our commission the last 2 years. I think that I have shown some leadership qualities on the county board. I certainly am open to all insights, and I understand the process of how meetings should run. My background is I've been a mathematics teacher and worked in accounting.
That's good.
All right, okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mary, you want to follow the same format, please, and tell the commission? Many of us already know you, but even so.
I have actually been a part of this commission since its inception. I have been the vice chair for several years. I want to say after you were no longer vice chair. So I've been on the board, this board, for over 20 years. I'm appointed as a member of the McHenry County Housing Authority. I think as well I have shown my leadership skills, so I don't know what more to say.
All right. Hans is, if there's one.
Knowing that,
If
I'm
there's-
going to just say,
Sure.
knowing the history of the Senior Services Grant Commission, I think has been an asset.
So, I don't like raising hands and voting because then that everybody knows, right? So Hans went to get the secret ballot paper. Then we'll go ahead and that's right. Hey, listen, I've done this in caucus, which is really ugly. So we'll do that. And while he's doing that, if it's okay with you, let's go on and I'll just, I need him for that too. So let's take a few minute break while he does.
Talk among yourselves.
I know, I said, I offered to rip paper off and he went away.
You guys have paper. I'm proud since Hans has formal secret ballot paper.
Really?
So I don't think we've ever done secret ballot before in my time on the board.
Has there ever been 2 nominations?
On my time on the board, we don't normally get to pick our vice chair.
Oh, well,
On the county board,
No, I
that she
mean-
means,
No, I mean,
Okay.
not here, right?
here, yeah, like 2 years ago, I don't think Mary was opposed at all.
Yeah, that's why.
And
And yeah, you don't get to pick because it's Mr. Bueller's choice. I am an open person and, you
And
know.
Pam, I would like to clarify on
Yeah.
something that you said. The reason why the bylaws didn't get passed the last time was because the county board makeup was changing, and we decided that we wanted to let this commission
That's right.
make the,
Make the
pass-
decision? We
yes, to
tabled
review the
it.
bylaws and
That's-
approve them.
That somehow got lost in the translation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, thank you, I appreciate that, Mayor.
We chose
So
to table it.
really quorum wasn't an
intentionally.
issue. Quorum was
Well,
not the issue.
it obviously got lost in the translation because it was brought to the board before this commission was
Well,
established.
that's, yeah,
So-
because we typically have the February meeting when we
Right.
convene and get to learn what we do.
I don't, does everybody have a writing utensil? Yeah. we all have.
Thank you.
Hans, do you have more of these?
I do work for
I
someone,
still need Rolodex.
I was gonna say, I do work for someone that does.
Thank you.
They are retired for us.
Mr. Hans is our
Fold them in half.
Die with me.
So I
Thank you.
Which year? We're going to do his last name.
Oh, there you go.
Right, when he, so also Eric, he's also new.
Oh.
So when Karen was taking from Eric. And
I'm sorry, Eric Ruth is representing the townships, which is, again, an appointment that's required by the bylaws, so that,
I think
yeah, I forgot.
There's two last name. Was he in the last meeting?
No, he was not, he was
No,
absent,
we
I
did, she
forgot.
knew Eric's, yes.
While you're doing that, Eric, as I drove north and looked at your dad's big thing with the flag, I realized that your name is in the middle of the word America.
I actually made the girl painting stop.
You need to.
She just had said, God bless Eric. And I was actually in Northwest Arrow the next day, just by luck.
Very good.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've been meaning to tease you about that.
We laugh about that every time.
Oh, did you see the
Why?
picture?
God bless Eric.
Yeah.
This is Chicago,
Hey, you
right?
take what
Take
you
what you
can
get.
get.
Yeah. I saw my opportunity.
Okay, so Mary has been elected as the vice chair of the board. Mary, congratulations.
Thank you.
Officially. The vote total is very close. Moving on, the overview of the LOI meeting with the applicants. So Bianca and Hans, and I believe you've done this in the past, correct? Have always had a stakeholders meeting, basically, with all of the individuals who are interested in potentially applying for the senior services grant. And you guys want to give a little brief overview of what happened and what actually rose to the top during those meetings?
Sure.
Meeting?
Should do it that first.
Yeah, you go.
Definitely. Okay, so just very similar to our CDBG and home and continuum of care funds, we always have an open meeting anytime a public notice goes out for funding. And the purpose of that meeting is to kind of give an overview of what the commission or committee or whatever it is, whatever it may be, is looking for that particular year. In this instance, we had developed those one-year outcomes, so that was something that was new to this group that they were hearing about. But it also offered the opportunity for potential new applicants to, to visit and decide whether this was an appropriate opportunity for them or not. So we did have, I think, 3 or 4 new organizations that had never received funding come to the meeting or participate online. Overall, they did ask some very good questions. We issued what's called like FAQs to respond to those questions that were surfacing. People that were a little more on the shy side didn't want to speak up in the meeting. They came to us afterwards and asked the questions. So we didn't document who asked the question. We just put the question down, and then we were able to go ahead and just put the answer down for that. So one of the questions that arose, which was a really interesting one, is can we put together a collaborative application? You see that as the second question there. And that's certainly always something that we want to see. So what we mean by collaboration, of course, is these 2 organizations get together and say we need to achieve X, Y, and Z. It isn't us saying, well, we have an MOU that anytime I have a person who's sick, I might go to Suzanne and say, would you help this person with some medication or whatever. It's really more of we're creating this separate project together and developing something. So I thought that that was a really good question. But these are, this is the list of questions that surfaced that we had, and if we encouraged potential applicants or returning applicants to submit any more questions to us. So the last revision was May 10th. We hadn't gotten any additional questions related to the overall program, more like just how to fill out a document kind of a thing, so we didn't put anything like that in there. But overall, I mean, I think that some of the questions that arose were how we determine the number of one-year outcomes. So we did have to look at a lot of data sets for that. I think the most challenging one that we had discussed even at the last meeting we had of this group was the IDD. It was very hard because it was based on birth rates, and it's really not. It's extrapolating who lives here now and who needs the services. So that was a really challenging one. Other than that, I think we found some very good data sets to use. So Bianca, if you wanted to just kind of run through some of those, go through some of these questions. So this is another thing, number 3. What we looked at is what we've historically seen. So things like food insecurity, for example, that would be something you've dealt with before, the Catholic Charities receiving funding. But if there was an applicant that was coming in that did something different that we have not funded with the commission before, we asked that they reach out to us by May 19th so that we can come up with an annualized outcome for that. We didn't get anybody who wanted to do that. So that's something we didn't have. So the list of things we do have is transportation, food insecurity, senior centers, homelessness, integrated senior services, dental, legal services, boarding, home health care, and IDD, intellectual developmental disability. Got to stop using acronyms.
Right.
For number 4, we were asking returning applicants. We want a full year's report on outcomes, and the only way we can get that was what they did with their 22 applications. So if it was returning application for the same exact project, we would be able to report the full year outcomes to the commission. So if they needed that application from us, we could render it out of the system for them. So I don't know how many people have asked, but maybe a couple.
Yeah, you probably send out at least 4.
Okay, it's not too many. I think people probably file them. Can you extend across multiple categories? We did get that one. And what we thought was, yeah, some of these projects are a pretty wide variety, and they may serve different things. So an example would be, I used to work at Turning Point, and one of the things we had was this little closet filled with food items. So sometimes people receive like a food pantry kind of a thing. So there are some times when it extends across multiple categories, and we encourage that those applicants to maybe take a look at that if you're doing transportation combined with something else. Make sure that you document what those activities are. So I thought that was a really good question. So number 6 is just a kind of cut and dry. If the commission doesn't think you should proceed after your LOI, come next year and apply for next year's funds. If you're late, you're late.
Thank you. We don't have to have that discussion again.
Well, last year, Kelly Charities was late.
Yes. And we had quite a discussion on whether or not,
Yeah.
but because of the food insecurities and that being a huge part of it,
Well, I think
the
we made it
commission
abundantly,
decided,
I think we made it abundantly clear at the meeting that if you're late, you're late. You know, there's been numerous attempts at outreach, people have been contacted. You know, if it's important enough for you to receive money, then it's important enough for you to get the application in.
right.
Period.
And, I mean, people were thinking to say no, but then thinking of all the seniors.
Understood. Yeah.
So
Understood.
it was a huge it was an internal conflict
Right.
for everybody, and we made it very clear at that point.
We had it out in the newspaper, because I saw it, got it out. So,
And can I also ask, are those who were not at the last meeting familiar with the presentation that we're referencing and how we came up with numbers of people who were attempting to serve over the 5-year period? Okay, I just wanted to make sure.
Which actually is, you brought that right up, number 8. Why did we come out with those annualized outcomes? Because we didn't have any outcome measures to go against. So we have a really old completed strategic plan that's really more anecdotal. Like, not that that's bad. We've had homeless plans like that too, right? Where it just says, help homeless people. Go talk to your community about homeless people. You know, it's like, those are wonderful things, but how many people are we going to help, or what we're really looking for here?
We may form a subcommittee on a strategic plan moving forward, but that's later. Yes, Paul?
Well, I wrote some stuff in my margins regarding number 9. And it's never, the Community Development Division developed financial capacity log in 2017. It has never been, I'm gonna skip down to the next sentence where it says it's never been applied to the Senior Services Grant Commission, but applied to the home grant. So my question is, why is it in there?
It's something that we were bringing to the commission and everyone's attention that we may be able to use as an option.
Say that again?
So it's a measure that we use for nonprofits to determine their financial health. So something that we would do for making sure that the organization is solvent or doesn't have the propensity to become insolvent.
So my question to you, and I know I'm going to be difficult, and it's okay for me to be that way. I think that what I said here, for the lay people who are reviewing grant applications, it's complicated and difficult to understand for that standard. And I'm going to say this, that some of the senior services receive Older American Act dollars, and those dollars are not means tested. And we've had a conversation here at the table in the past about some of those programs. We don't know, let's say home delivered meals or congregate meal sites are targeted or accessible to that kind of standard, because the Older American Act prohibits that kind of standard. So there is a contradiction of what we're trying to do in our measurements, because some agencies are prohibited to, based on the kind of dollars they receive, to do that.
But in my understanding, Paul, you're talking about applying that to individuals. I don't think that's what we're saying.
No, you're applying it to agencies.
Intent.
And some agencies don't keep the data that you're asking for because they are prohibited in keeping that data based on the kind of dollars they receive from the Older American Act. That's all I'm saying. This is not
Okay.
about individuals. It is about grant making and how agencies keep the information internally programmatically. And you're shaking your head, you know what I mean, Carol Louise?
Yes.
And so, here we are, we're back to that initial discussion that we had some years ago. I think you're applying, all due respect to you, hon.
We're recommending, this is open for discussion, Paula.
Okay.
I asked them to bring this forward so that because we have these itty bitty amount of money.
I know that you have this little bit of.
So I
money.
asked for that information so that we would have a discussion, so that Hans and Bianca can bring that information forward and let this new
Well-
makeup of the commission discuss whether or not that's a viable criteria or not. Because again, we've had the same amount of money for over 10 years.
We have.
We have to make sure we're spending it and that we can justify why we're spending it to the taxpayers. So it was me, don't be mad at them. I asked them to
No,
bring
I'm not
everything
mad.
forward.
I'm just saying, I'm not mad or anything. I think we need to be cognizant of how agencies, let's say Catholic Charities, who they do home delivered meals and they do congregate meal sites. They may not be able to provide that kind of.
But you
data set.
understand that the audit that is used to determine this is our grant funds that we provided them when we audit that, how they spent it. They should be able to keep that data, that's part of the
Financial
criteria.
audit, the agency's.
Well, they
financial audit.
can't, they can,
But that's two
they can
different
tell
things,
you.
right?
Yeah, I think that it's something else. This isn't looking at the income of the individuals taking advantage of the
That's-
programs.
yeah.
This is really looking at
The
how healthy
nonprofit.
financially
Is the
the
agency.
organization is.
The organization is.
That's
So
it.
will they be able to comply with that?
Oh, they should be. This is.
So
this is
they're providing an audit
information.
every
Yeah.
time.
Yeah, this should be no problem.
It should, yeah, for most of our agencies, I don't think it's an issue at all.
I think all of our agencies have to provide a clean audit before we even consider them. I mean, that's just part of the
right.
checklist. So that's not ever been an issue.
But we've never used this as a criteria before.
Right, we've applied it toward those other programs listed, but not to this one.
And so the conversation is, do you want to be consistent and use that as a measurement? Or do you want to just?
So what about if we did it this year where we actually didn't have any points associated with it, and let's see how things worked out? It was more like a trial run, and have that financial log included in it, but not put any points to or against it.
Well, and the funding for this.
Wait a minute. Eric?
I mean,
I'm getting lost.
I'm fine with it being a trial run. I think it makes sense to still put points though. If for no other reason than if we decide, or the commission decides next year, hey, this was good, at least now we have kind of baseline numbers to look at. You know, are they worsening, improving, or whatnot? I mean, I'm.
No, you're right, and I agree with you. What I meant is, it wouldn't necessarily weigh against or for an application. We should have the raw data and the raw numbers that you ascribe, but maybe not have those numbers this year impact our decisions on the applications for this year.
And this is what it looks like. I'm sorry, Mary, you had a comment?
I probably did. You know, I'm a
Just a
senior
conversation was
now.
underway, sorry.
It's this sheet, yes?
Yes.
Yeah, that's the sheet.
So yeah, and what it's looking at is like, you know, assets compared to liabilities, net assets, et cetera, up at the top there. What kind of revenue they raise versus expenses, what kind of expenses they have toward their total income. If you scroll, you don't have the same kind of one I do. If you scroll down, there's gonna be how the organization fundraises, how much in government funding they have, what are their admin rates based on the United Way's method of collecting it, or the general admin method, which is what the state uses to determine that. You would commonly see that on the AG 990, for example. So if you're looking at real high numbers in those categories, they score poorly. So you only get once you get past 25% of an admin rate, it starts to look a little excessive in terms of admin. That, our limit for CDBG, for example, is 20%. We would never be past that. If you scroll down a little bit more, then you're going to see their fundraising efficiency and their government funding reliance. So if they have a high reliance on, potentially unreliable, we've seen the politics in the past few weeks with the debt ceiling and things like that. You have a high percentage there that looks a little more risky. So we're looking all about risk here, and whether one organization is more risky than another one. Whether they're really going out there and trying to use volunteers, whether they're trying to raise funds, holiday appeals, those kinds of things. That's really going to show in those contributions. So, so this is something that's worked. Again, HUD has really liked the use of this in the grants that we've administered that way. And we found these measures. We looked at, I think, 13 different ones. We picked these 8, and each one is a maximum of 12.5 points. So you get your score all the way at the bottom. What we commonly do, we'll show the distribution of scores and show the mean score, and then how many sigmas they are away from the mean score.
It would be, as the chair, it would be my preference to use this, again, whether or not we count it this year or we use it as an example of how we're going to move forward. That's kind of up to you.
I don't care one way or the other, but I do think, I don't care if we use it as an evaluation tool this year or as a trial run, but I do think we should, at a minimum,
Absolutely.
keep track of the score and whatnot.
It's just a harbinger of what business is doing and whether we should be reaching out to them or not.
But Kim, it tells you a lot about management, it tells you about where they're getting their money and what their own fees are. If they left their own fees flat and looking at somebody else, fill it in.
I think the consensus is to use the information, but the question is whether or not we incorporate that into the overall scoring rubric. So
the only caveat I am going to throw out is municipalities are not going to be measured this way. It's not possible, so I'm going to have to find some other way to look at that. A public housing authority has a score from HUD, so I can use that score from HUD.
My preference, is it okay for me to say something? I think my preference is not to use it this cycle in the scoring.
is there a consensus?
Yeah.
All right, let's
I
do that.
agree.
We'll
I think it
utilize
gives them
the
a chance to
information, not incorporate it into the scoring, but we obviously will have the information
It's a
available.
point of
Right.
And we can see how that ultimately plays into the decision making as we move forward.
So we
Because we
will
do
score it, we just won't use that as a measure against the.
Correct.
We'll just provide it to them.
That's
Yeah, we'll just provide it
And
as
it won't be us scoring it, it's you
No,
guys
it's
scoring it.
Hans' team.
That's
Hans
valuable
gets
information.
Yes, and it may make you score differently, but it won't get any points or anything.
No problem.
And that'll give some agencies a better idea of what it is that we're looking for, not being penalized for maybe, because we know sometimes it's difficult to fill the forms out that we ask them accurately to begin with, and so for them to provide that information gives them a year of grace.
I agree.
And that's exactly how we should present it, a year of grace.
Yeah.
Thank you. Yeah. Okay.
And then you move it back to that last one. So just to go, here's question 10, we just brought that up. How would a municipality be measured? So I will talk to our CFO about that. I have not been able to inquire with her about, go ahead.
I'm
sorry.
I was going to talk about that point exactly. CMAP, the regional agency, actually has they score all 275 municipalities in the Chicagoland region on their capacity, their staff capacity, right, from high to low, and they use that rating to sort of apply CMAP staff to help that city with planning tasks, because they know they don't have the expertise in-house to do that. So that may be a stand-in that could help score any type of municipal sponsor. Townships are different. We don't do that for townships, so if we get township applicants, that might be a different thing altogether.
I think that's our biggest unit of government that applies, but, yeah.
We do have one village, so.
Yeah.
Okay, that's great to know. I didn't know that.
I
So,
can pass that along.
Does anybody have any questions about any of this information? And we did have excellent attendance at that stakeholder meeting.
Yes.
I was real pleased.
7 in person and 28 virtual.
Oh,
to be exact.
It was good.
It's the highest we've seen in a while for anything, so I think people are very interested in knowing what's going on here, so.
And kind of sliding right into the next topic, if you want to just kind of go through the application itself. And this obviously was used with all of our potential applicants as well. We went through the application process.
So this is our 2023 application that we used. So this is, we obviously have to go ahead and update to the most recent year, the income limits.
It just came out, actually.
Yep. I think like a week ago.
Ms. Jensen, you have a question? Paul?
I'm sorry.
That's what this is for.
Under grants will not be made to fund, I said animals. You know, like agencies that do horse therapy or pet, you know, that are therapeutically oriented towards pet therapy, force therapy. It's something for us to consider. I mean, we may get an application for seniors to learn how to be more ambulatory, more whatever. Do you want to consider an agency that provides that kind of, or even working with Alzheimer's people, bringing pets in to soothe and to help them with their memory? I mean,
Hans just indicated that we have had such applications in the past. So I don't see any reason, right, so I see no reason to, you know, limit anybody from applying in 2023.
cognitive therapy with
No,
animals, that's how it should be
Right.
That would
stated.
be a great collaborative application between like an Independence Health and Mainstays to work together to come up
That's
with
right.
one to
But we
help.
need to be, we need to be cognizant of it. There are other ways to help people.
So Mary, that was a therapy that was done for years. And you're right.
It'd be a great collaboration.
Very effective.
Do you want to just talk about the changes to the application as opposed to?
So I know that the last meeting we had pulled up the wrong one, so I did go through this one, and it seems like most of those changes that were suggested at the last meeting were done for the 23 application. So if it's okay with you guys, we'll go ahead and use last year's and just obviously change the
Those
program
things that
year,
we missed,
the
yeah.
program year, and we'll update all the financials.
And thank you, Paul and Mary, for recognizing that from the get-go, so thank you.
And then is there any way we can make sure, because what's hard then is when we print.
Yeah, when we print it out. So that's something that I will work with the Neighborly, because if you notice, even here for me, this is a download that they sent me, and it still cuts off.
Yeah, and it'll cut off,
Mhm.
so if someone wrote 10 words more,
Yep.
so while we can still, for how many years we've been doing this, 20 years, ask them to be very succinct in doing their descriptions, because I find repetitively that you get exactly like the same thing almost in every box. So just pull out what's the most important. So I don't know how we can keep saying that, but try again. Because it's,
Yeah, and then I'll go ahead.
Is Aileen still a contact person?
No, so this is something that is gonna be updated. Yes, that's part of the update. Aileen will be removed from there, and then I'll go ahead and add my contact information.
Any other questions? Seeing none, we'll go on to new business, which is really kind of the purpose of this entire meeting, is, again, not to belabor the issue, but there is minimal amount of funds And there always is an increasing need and cost. That just is the way life is, right? We have 25% of McHenry County's population is senior driven, and I'm using senior definition as anybody over 60. So there's a lot of need. We do have an aging population, which is, I think, a kudos to McHenry County that people want to stay here. But we need to talk about how you want to prioritize allocating these funds to organizations that provide very specific types of services to our seniors. So I thought we would have a conversation today to kind of kick it around and give you an idea as we move forward and we start looking at those applications, and even more so as Hans and Bianca and Faith look at the letters of intent and how they go through those and what they bring forward to us. So, Hans again, do you want to go through all of those needs that we are authorized to fund, and then let's have a discussion on where we want to focus.
Sure. So again, the listing is transportation, food insecurity, senior centers, homelessness, integrated senior services, so that would be more intense levels of services at a senior center typically, dental, legal services, boarding, home health care, and intellectual developmental disability, IDD.
And do you have the numbers?
You can
So we
pull
can
that
pull that up.
I have to disconnect so I could go ahead and look at that PowerPoint.
Okay, sorry. Okay.
Very good.
I just thought if we actually had that. So I thought, you know, maybe Hans, you can kind of give some of your ideas, background, and then maybe Mary and Paula, because you were the chair and co-chair, maybe you can put some color, the meat on the bones that Hans kind of outlines as to what we've looked at in the past or what we funded in the past.
So I do have,
Yeah,
this is
yeah.
the initial notes that I took down. Yeah, so what we looked at is, in most cases, we looked at 5 years worth of outcomes and divided it by 5 to come up with a 1-year outcome. So in the transportation category, since those are typically at the top of the listing, we have it documented on the thing what we looked at, but I know when Scott was here the last time, you referenced that was a common statistic to look at. But what we determined was seniors 65 and over who don't drive and have a disability. We came out with 8,333 individuals with an annualized outcome of 1,666. For food insecurity, we looked at the individuals, the percent that the state indicated were food insecure, with an income under $50,000, and it's 12.9% of the population, which is 11,452. So that comes down to 1,477, and we determined that that was just an urgent need. That's not, we're not dividing that by 5. For senior centers, that would be unemployed individuals are not on the labor force, so that's 46,200 people, 65 and over. That's by 20% of that, we came out with 9,240 individuals. For home health care, we looked at individuals 65 and over with a disability living alone. And we determined that there are 3,086, and so 1/5, 617 might need those services. So we are seeing that kind of thing, those populations go up because the population just got older. You know, we really didn't change in terms of the whole number. For homelessness, we looked at year 2017 homeless over 50. We use 50 because there's comorbidities in a lot of those individuals. We had 113 individuals in the system in 2017. In 2022, that number skyrocketed to 343. 343 people documented as homeless. So that's a 204% increase. So we determined that 69 people would be the measurable outcome for a year. All right, I would go to the next one.
So-
I think I probably did.
Yeah, I think we were all over the place, so let's see. All right.
Yeah, it was always at the end.
Yeah, so transportation, do you get transportation?
Yes.
yet? Okay. Home health care, we did, integrated services.
Integrate. Okay, so for here, the potential applicant was Independence Health and Therapy, so they're a little bit more intense levels of services. And so what we looked at are Medicare beneficiary health conditions with Alzheimer's. And so we were looking at almost 10 years worth of individuals. And so we had 3,546 that number's relatively remained stable. You know, it's kind of almost the same number, but it's still, you know, around that 9 to 10% of that particular population. So, you know, that's an intense level of services, and what we determine then by income levels, the lower income individuals under 30% of area median income were measured. We came out with an annual target of 148. So that 3,690, we only took the people at 30% or less, presuming that they might have some other forms of insurance or savings, et cetera. All right. This was, again, the hard one to measure because it was looking at birth rates. So we had a really, really hard time with coming up with this. So we were looking at autism spectrum disorder and significant Down syndrome. And so what we came up with was a measure of an annual target of 39 individuals. Again, this would be one that if anybody had any input or thoughts on how we could do a better version of adult measures of this population, I would be open to some suggestions on that, because I felt like we just were looking at births. So it's not people that they're serving right now. All right, we mentioned homelessness. Okay, this is
food security.
Food insecurity, okay, that's how that was measured. It's the senior center, so we're looking more at socialization there. Dental programs, so what we looked at is the prevalence of tooth loss of the senior population. So what we're seeing here is a good drop, actually, the number of people with significant tooth loss, even just in those 2 years. Not that that's great, we still have a high population of about 3,913. So 1/5 is 783, so still a need.
Because they've already allocated all of their funds a month ago.
Yeah.
It's all been allocated already, and we're only, how many months, 5 months into
Yeah, we got another 6 months
into the
to go.
program, and they've already they haven't collected it yet, but it's all been allocated out already.
That's amazing. So in this one, for legal services, we actually looked at the Corporation for Legal Services, which actually is, I think, the overarching organization over Prairie State, like the kind of national. So what we're looking at here is 71% of individuals 65 or more will need some form of legal services. So then we took the people at 30% or less of area median income, again, lower income individuals. That's measured by households. And so we determined 3,701 households. The prevalence of 71% is 2,628 households. Divided by 5 is 526 as an annualized target.
And we will be reviewing, you know, our data and where we're obtaining as time goes on. I mean, everything moves, but this is the best we can do with what we had for the time being.
And this is the one where we just said, you know, run rate has been about 8. So 8 was the measure. So it's really hard to predict how many orders there are. That's a very hidden thing until a fire person tries to go in there, you know, law enforcement, et cetera. And this is what you see when you walk in.
And it's a lengthy process as well, that's the other part. It just takes forever to deal with. So open conversation as, you know, what you think we should be looking at from a priority perspective for funded purposes.
The only comment I have is that we need to look at underserved areas geographically within the county. And that's important. I mean, it's in Harvard, in Richmond, there's some areas that are hard to reach. And the other piece is that we used to fund the PEARLS program, which was an in-home geriatric program for people who have mental health issues. And I think somehow we could never get that program off the ground, but I do think that we need to really examine that. But it's also the underserved, the geography of how we make those allocation decisions so that there is a distribution of services in those areas. That's my only feedback.
Anybody else that has heard? Mary, you've been on the commission for a long time. Any recommendations or suggestions on where we should really focus in providing, or Carol Louise, I mean, obviously you two bring a host of information and background and experience, ideas that you might have as to where we should look to spend that money appropriately, get the biggest bang for our buck, so to speak.
There's so many needy programs here.
That, again, hence the need for this conversation. Yeah, it's not the actual viability of all of those programs. It's if I had all the money in the world, we'd be
Yeah,
fine.
we'd fund them all.
We have limited funds.
Right. I think what we've been doing in the past in all these programs is looking at each one of them and seeing with their application what their need is and what we can actually afford to give them. You know, so I don't see anybody who, on the list, who's not needy and serving the elder adult. The problem I have is there's never enough money. And
Right.
so in order to serve them, we have to do what we've been doing and see what the priorities are and give them the dollars that we have to do that. So each year when I go through that notebook, I'm like, okay, we have this much money and this is how much money this program, can receive. And the other part is the money that's left sometimes in the pot. That's a concern to me. Unspent money.
And we didn't have very much left in the pot. Again, I've got to commend, these people over here in working with the organizations that receive those monies, because there's constant contact and constant assistance in ensuring that they spend all the dollars that they get. So, kudos to you guys. I think that's my concern, though, that encapsulates what I'm thinking. I have this much money. I don't want to give 10 cents to Suzanne and 10 cents to Paula and 10 cents to Scott and get nothing,
Yes.
right?
Right.
I serve 2 people. I want to have a conversation on where we think, as a commission, the highest priority of need is, and then to look to try and provide as much funds as we can to fulfill that priority, and then kind of work our way down. Instead of, again, giving a little bit to everybody and making everybody feel good, and not doing the best we can possibly do with those funds that we have.
Well, I think Mickey said it best in that they all provide transportation, but they all provide transportation in a different way. So I think the people that we have, the agencies that we have allocated to, each do something different. We are very, or in the past, I should say, we have been very cognizant about not allocating to duplicate services.
I understand. I'm not conveying my thought well. So let me go back. Please.
So I think when I
Your voice is always good.
When I go through the applications for the last 2 years, and last year I was better at it because I had some experience, right?
Well,
Was I
that
look-
helps.
Yeah,
Right.
I look at, the cost per person being served.
Yes.
And is that a reasonable cost? Like at one time I was looking at, for one program, I was looking at a cost and saying, if I just gave the family the money that was cost per person, they would use it better. And so, I was like, I was not a supporter of giving that organization their full funding. I saw them as an organization that would get funding towards the bottom of my list, right? Because I didn't say don't give them any money. I just said we don't need to give them as much money. So I look a lot at cost per person that's being served, and is that a reasonable cost for that person, right?
Or for that service. maybe.
For that service, right? So for instance, like some of these, the senior centers and camp individuals who, the home daycare is, if the cost for the home daycare is so much that if you just gave that family the money, the adult child would just take off and use that money instead and be the babysitter. And I'm like, well, then that's an awful lot. Right.
All right, let Matt and then Suzanne, please.
brand new, so for
Yeah.
me, all this is great. But what I look at is for seniors, helping my own family seniors, the
Yeah.
number one thing that we do is try and keep them in housing keep the roof from leaking, keep them where they're staying.
Right.
The number 2 thing we do is try and keep them nutritionally fed, because
Right.
they don't do well with that either. Ironically, the number 3 thing moves ahead of everything else is actually transportation, because they go to more doctor's appointments and more stuff than you can believe. And at my house, it is difficult to tag your it, because we have multiples going multiple directions. That's hard to do. So to me, that's the hierarchy of need. A house,
That's what I'm looking for.
food, and transportation.
Agreed.
All the other stuff is superfluous, and it's great, and if there's money to go there, that's fine. But people want to be secure in their residence, they want to be fed, and they definitely got to make their doctor's appointments.
That's the kind of thing I'm looking for, that type of priority. Not when you look at the application, but what do we want to do? And I think that's true. One of the most important aspects of the program, keep people in their homes. That's where they want to be. How do we do that, right?
That was the
So,
purpose
so
of
that's
the-
kind of, that's kind of what I'm looking for, so thank you. Suzanne?
I would caution against that we look just at the cost per person, because you may think if we just gave them the money, well, we're not giving them the money. That's the reality. They're not going to get that money. And we may think $400 is ridiculous for a doctor's appointment, but it's still, that's what it costs. So I don't know that any of us have a really good handle on what some of those services cost per person. And some of those more intensive services are going to be expensive, but it also helps keep them in their homes. So I want to make sure that we have that balance between, yes, these are cost-effective programs, but also there are going to be smaller numbers who are going to require a boatload of money, and we can't forget about them. And I think I would tend to shy a little bit more away from the food security issue, only because it's very much the forefront of a lot of people's minds, and there are quite a few resources out there, you know, in terms of like the Crystal Lake Food Pantry will deliver prepackaged food. We've got United Way being able to deliver Uber Eats type things. So not that it's not important, but some of these
Where the
single
void is.
agencies that are the literal only ones providing this one particular service, I think we just need to balance that.
And I think going off of that too is it's so hard to compare agency to agency, even as far as transportation goes, because transportation is different, like what the county is doing with PACE and with McRide is different than what they're doing with the townships, what the township transportation services are. And then also what Senior Volunteer Care Network, I always have to think that through before I say it. What kind of transportation they're providing. So it's transportation, but it's still different. So it's hard to even say transportation, this is what it's gonna look like, because it doesn't look the same.
And again,
Again, for the people that are new, for the
Yeah.
people that have been here for a couple of years, we understand that. But that's just something that we have to really think about.
And again, I'm trying to prioritize the bigger, broader buckets. Transportation, regardless of how it looks or what, that is a category, you know?
Always has.
Right, that's one of the buckets. So that's the conversation I kind of wanted to have. And
Well,
thank you
I
for
just want to
articulating.
say about nutrition programs. Home delivered meals offer another benefit where there's someone coming into the home and doing a well-being check on the individual that cannot get out and cannot take care of themselves. So they're trained to look in on this person along with delivering the meals and also dealing with the issue of social isolation. So it is a little bit different, and I agree with you about there's other food opportunities for individuals, but I think home delivered meals through, for example, Catholic Charities, they do other things besides just delivering the food, and we need to be
And I hope they would,
cognizant of
yeah,
that.
right, but I would hope they
Yes.
would put that in their
We
application.
need to be cognizant
Right,
of
I mean, if
what
they,
Yeah, they do.
that's on them, that's on
But,
us.
yeah, they talk about the
So is there, outside of what Matt indicated with his housing, transportation, and food security, anybody else have any ideas about those bigger, broader categories that should kind of rise to the top when we look at our, Rhonda?
Yeah, okay, so as a trustee, I get a lot of people contacting me, and then, of course, I live in Sun City, and I hear it there too. Bottom line, my opinion, Paul, I think you're right. Huntley is very well taken care of, okay? The only thing I'm hearing is there's a need for low-income housing, and it's not for seniors. We have it, okay? The need is for younger residents. So I like your idea of underserved areas. I don't really, you have to, McHenry to me is small compared to Kane where I live, but I think we really need to prioritize, I mean, not everybody's a Huntley.
Right.
Right.
And so, transportation, yes, because seniors, a lot of them can't drive, okay? For whatever reason, and I know a lot of them have lost their cars due to accidents, insurance, and everything else, okay? Food, yes, except there are multiple food pantries, and I'm gonna go back to Huntley. We probably have 3 or 4 of them alone, all right? And so, you know, Grafton, but we have much more than that, and our churches. So I don't know about food. I've been thinking health. Are the numbers changing for people under Medicaid and Medicare? I'm not talking in the future with what the federal government has projected and what Pritzker just signed, okay, because that's next year. But are we serving our, you said intellectual disabilities, that's what I did my whole life, is work with kids who had disabilities, okay, special needs. Are we meeting that? I'm starting to pick up things like school board 158 issues about it. I'm friends with a
But these
lot
are
of
adults.
parents.
These are
And it's ironic that even Chicago Public Schools, if you just caught it, that the union is going after the woman who's in charge of special needs in Chicago. They want her removed. That's the job that I did. It put me out into the fields with Chicago. I'm wondering if we should be looking at those numbers. They're underserved.
But you're seniors.
Right. we're talking about
Seniors
seniors.
with developmental
I
disabilities.
understand that.
Okay.
Yeah.
But your qualification of a senior was what number?
I just said for population purposes, it was 60 and over.
Yeah.
I know it vacillates 55,
See,
60,
I think it's
65.
55,
I looked
personally.
at 60 because that's how they broke it out in the census.
But should we make a decision here before we start making decisions, ultimate decisions about who we're going to include or exclude?
Well, I think
In
we
terms of
had,
age?
I think we had used 50.
We did use 50
We
because I
did use
haven't.
50 because that was Pioneer Center, the folks with the developmental disabilities
Right.
age have the senior aging issues earlier.
So we have to make that decision because we're all over the place with that number. But this is my 3rd year now. 50 was the number that we decided to go with.
Right.
No, I'm just throwing all this out.
No. Good, I mean, good conversation. Eric, you got anything? This, not that Eric, who's here. Not that Eric.
You're off the hook.
Eric H., Eric R.
No.
Eric R.,
I'm just
anything?
observing today, no, nothing yet.
His head's ready to explode.
Okay.
That happens in the first year.
Well, I'll throw out that some other
Yeah,
categories
please.
that didn't get discussed though were senior centers, integrated senior services, home health care, obviously boarding, legal services, homelessness.
I'm going to opine that home health care rises to the top for me. Just if we're worried about transportation and we're worried about people staying in their homes, that to me seems to kind of gel into the overall
That fills 2 buckets.
concern, yeah. So,
I think the issue with the home health is the health department had come through, is the not-for-profit status versus the for-profit and what we can entertain as far as an application. So that the home health has always been for-profit and not-for-profits.
Only public health.
I don't
No,
think so. Yeah, I don't think that's a clarification. I don't think for-profits can apply for this money.
that was my point.
Yeah.
That was my point, is that we weren't
Right.
able
Yeah,
to
yeah.
get not-for-profit home
Yeah.
health to apply, only for-profit.
Right. But again, I'm just saying that's one of my buckets, I'm not going to say
Oh.
that, just, you know, if we do get somebody, I would obviously categorize that a little higher in need than I would
Right.
maybe something else, that's all I'm saying.
Pam, could I say something?
Yes, please.
Maybe this would be helpful for the new members, but when we entertain an application, for example, from a senior center, whatever they want to do has to be research-based. We're not providing money for the weekly bingo game and lunch. It's a research-based program that has effective results, proven results. That's what we look
I
for.
agree.
And you understand, I'm just trying to get a rubric so that as we go through the letters of intent, or interest, letters of intent.
I know,
interest,
it's-
whatever, LOIs. So when we go through them, staff has a better idea of what to prioritize, and then when we actually are looking at them, we know what services have risen to the top, so that we say, oh yeah, this should be in this pile. That's what I'm looking for today.
On top of
Scott.
that, wouldn't, you know, by this committee setting those priorities, hopefully you get more applications that fill those needs, right?
Right,
More
exactly.
innovative ideas that might come forward to fill this transportation need or the home health need or
You
whatever.
would think. You would think.
If we tell people straight up, if you come with these ideas, you are very likely to get funding. You would think there'd be new proposals coming forward, you would hope.
You would think.
Because that's always been something I've struggled with, transportation coming up and being an issue for over a decade now.
Yes.
Every single year I hear it. And I've asked Hans this, going way back, it's like, I wish the commission had ideas. Like the DOT and the county as a whole is very open to trying new things to help seniors. But we're not focused just on the senior population, we're focused on moving everybody in the county. And what I really need are some good ideas from either this commission or applicants to this commission. And we can help fill that need, it's just, we need ideas to do that, so.
And I think as we talk about a strategic plan, that's part of it. How do we outreach, how do we bring people in, how do we educate, all of that. It's been over 12 years since we've talked about what we want to do as a commission. That's too long, it's way too long.
Well, I think we've had the discussions, it's just not gotten into a strategic plan. I think that's a discussion we have every year. What is it that we're looking for? What is it we want for the year going forward?
But the danger in that, Mayor, and I get it, but the danger in that is the transition from your conversations to the following year are limited, right?
Well, exactly.
And it's important to have some continuity as we all leave, that the next guys understand what our rationale was, and if it's right, or if it needs to be adapted, sorry.
Right.
So that's why I wanted to get something in paper. That's my big thing, not housing. So, anybody else have any other comments with regard to the priorities? Otherwise, I think that we'll get together and
The Friday meeting.
Oh, Friday meeting, yeah, thank you, oh my God. And then the last thing really, member comments, et cetera, my comment is, what day do you guys want to meet? Friday, I'm gonna sit and go, I hate Fridays. I've decided Fridays are like the beginning of my weekend already, so I don't want to be here at 2 o'clock on a
Well,
Friday.
that's why we were doing
Transportation is
8:30 in the
horrible
morning.
everywhere.
It was the beginning of the day, it was easier, people were coming right from home here.
I'm all about 8:30 in the morning. I think that the reason it probably did is it conflicts with some of our committee meetings at 8:30, but we could make it maybe later in the month and there wouldn't be such a.
Right, I think it was about the
When's our next
time.
meeting scheduled for? Because
So
we have them
that's-
scheduled.
The
July.
next meeting's scheduled July 21st.
And
It's
so there's
on
enough
Friday.
time to change the day and the time if that's what we want to do. That's why we did it.
I know the LOI one and the all-day one, the Fridays.
Well, yeah, all day is all
Yeah,
day.
they're both on Friday.
Yeah, they're
at
both on
8:30.
Fridays at 8:30.
But if you guys wanted to change the day from, get away from a Friday, go ahead and speak up now.
I'm
Before I
on
hold your
Monday.
peace.
Yeah, I prefer to change from Friday because I have personally none of them now.
I know, so people, it's summer, people get out of town. So I don't care. I'm,
Monday or Tuesday?
Let's do, I don't like Mondays.
do you like mornings?
Well, and then you get into the
You
holidays
don't.
that fall on Mondays.
No, but I'm thinking of other schedules too. I mean, we have to watch our committees. I know people have court. I don't know everybody else. Mornings are better.
We have no committees on.
I work
Yeah, mornings
every
are better.
afternoon.
We do, that is true, that
I
we
work
don't have
afternoons.
committees on Mondays.
We don't
so.
have-
I have
Mondays.
board almost every Monday morning.
Okay.
Maybe, maybe
I mean,
that's Tuesday.
But what time does
we
work
don't,
start?
so
Eight-
Pam,
8:30
can
or
I
9
ask,
normally, depending on what courtroom.
can I ask a question? How many meetings are you anticipating? Historically, we met in February. That was a time that we got together to talk about the bylaws, the policies, invite agencies in, see what we were looking for as far as where they were seeing, if there were new needs that popped up. Then we would meet just before the LOI meeting to go over the application, see where we were at, get updates on, from agencies, where we were at as far as spending, because we started spending December 1st, and we really haven't heard much about where we're at right now. Then we would meet in July with the, then we would meet in July doing the LOI, and then in September, and then start it again. So we typically met 4 times.
Right, I think that's what we talked about, and I think
So
that's.
if we're doing 4 Fridays in a year, and we always had the schedule, usually in September, we had the schedule for the next year already in place with the date. The only time that it changed was when a new county board was coming in and the potential of a new.
That's what happened.
Right,
That's true.
and the potential of a new chairperson, and in the past, it's, you know, maybe it went to March instead of February, but, so if we're only looking at 4 meetings in the year, 4 Friday mornings at 8:30 shouldn't be, if we can get them out a year ahead.
Well, we'll be better next year, I promise you. We had some challenges this year moving forward. Suzanne?
I wouldn't mind, I do like the idea of knowing ahead of time,
Yes.
but it doesn't always fit in with lives, that's the other thing, and so sometimes we don't end up.
Right.
That's the
Right.
biggest
So
one.
perhaps if we decided the months that we wanted to meet, and then between the chair, vice chair, and staff, decided, okay, here are 3 dates in July, let's send out a doodle poll, when can the majority of the commissioners come? Then we'll be assured at least of having a quorum
Well, I
on those
think-
dates.
For the July, and because those are the, it's not just us, it's also having that date in the application that went out before July. So we would really need to know that a couple months ahead so the agencies can plan to be here to do their presentations. So I would say for the other months, that would probably work, but for those 2 that are involving more than just us, that might be a little bit harder.
Yeah, reasonable.
So do we agree on Fridays? I mean,
I don't know that we
I
have.
don't know.
Oh, I see.
I'm just, for July, I mean, one of the issues is we run up against our own committee meetings,
Yeah, I know.
right? So, I mean, I don't have a problem with any particular day. I'm agreeable to all days.
All right, I offered it, we'll just stay where we are and we won't change anything because that seems to be more hassle than not. So we'll just leave everything as it is.
Thank you.
At least for the next 2, and then
I'll make your lives miserable on Fridays, no, I'm just,
Yeah, I won't.
so we're gonna stay with Friday.
that's
Yes, that's what she's saying, at least for this calendar year.
Right.
2 things. I'm happy to meet in July, but in August, I'm going to be moving to Michigan to be close to my family. So I'm happy to help until the end of July. I will still be here. And it's hard to say goodbye after so many years in the community. That's one of my announcements. But the other thing is, I attended the Age Guide Board of Directors meeting, and we reviewed the finances and what the Older American Act dollars mean from the federal government, because those dollars also impact the agencies that we fund here. And the federal funding is remaining flat this year. And Hans is shaking his head correct. I'm
Yeah.
correct, am I correct with
Yes.
that? And with that, Age Guide's budget is around 30 million, and I'm the vice chair of the finance committee. But I think that impacts the kind of decisions that we make, and we need to be cognizant of the kind of funding maybe some of these agencies are going to be receiving, like home delivered meals. Mickey, what is your percentage of your budget from the Older American Act dollars? The CCP program, that kind of stuff. So I think we need to be aware that federal funding is remaining flat.
Well, and ours is going down.
And the numbers are increasing of seniors. That demographic is increasing. That's all, that's my announcement. I'm happy to be here in July.
You're gonna miss your ball. I'm gonna miss it.
So Pam, I'm confused. Is the next time we're getting together gonna stick with what you put out, July 21st at 8:30?
Yes.
Oh, is it July 21st?
Well, that's the date you've already given to everybody for
She was
the-
trying to change the date, and we won't agree to it.
Yeah.
And I acquiesced, I didn't, I mean,
Yeah.
okay.
We've already kind of put those dates out to the applicants, so.
Let's just stick with it.
Okay, I got it.
We're fine.
But next year we can change it.
It's fine the way it is right now, we'll worry about next year, too many
So
other
our
things.
next meeting's.
We also had,
That's the whole one.
just so you guys are aware, we also had a vacancy. We think we have an applicant, and now with Paula's sad notice, we'll have another vacancy, and so we'll go out and search for somebody to do that as well.
Is it okay for me to be here in July?
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Well, in July, and if you know anyone, Paula, that would be interested in filling your position,
I will
it'll go
ask
up once
around.
you,
We've got a couple too that have already expressed interest that I think we'll pursue. Not that Paula can't submit somebody that she wants, but we've been seeking people for a while to get up to speed. And yes, Paul, come in July, but if we have those applicants, we'll invite them so that they're up to speed on what's going on as well.
So then Pam, will we have the rest of the year's meetings? And we know what meeting in July?
I'm not changing a thing.
and so September 15th
I'm not
is
changing
the
a
other
thing.
one.
All right.
Everything stays the same, not changing.
And in September you get lunch, so.
So when will we be receiving the copies of the applications, the letters of intent?
So the deadline for our applicants is this coming Monday at 4 p.m.
Okay,
The meeting is July 21st, so,
We should aim for like the end of the month.
yeah.
the end of June?
Yeah.
End of
Okay.
June, maybe first week of July.
And so you will not be giving us binders this year for either one of the meetings?
Correct. However, I can go ahead and put it on a flash drive if that's easier for everyone. That way, you don't have to be digging into different areas, and then hopefully I could like set them up in a folder, and then you could look at
So you're printing,
That'd be great.
Yeah, actually, I
so
like
you
that
put
a
your
lot.
own, you're printing your own.
Order flash drives.
And I promise you'll get them before the 4th of July holiday.
Put in your room.
Okay, there's a
Okay.
Yeah.
we'll do that. If that's
We're not doing it.
My last time, yes. I mean,
Anybody else have anything?
even though I'm only in my 40s, I'm probably gonna turn it to you.
Can I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Everybody say aye.
Aye.
We're out of here.
Thank you.
Yeah, Matt won't be able to be here.
My sister
Nice meeting you too, Eric.
What are we doing?
Oh, and I don't